Once upon a time there lived a fool, a young boy with the world at his feet and a dream in his heart. So full of joy was he, that he walked in a daze and lived in the here and now. Some might say his head was full of air, but they would be wrong. The fool was fully aware of every single thing, for he engaged all of his senses and moved through life with ease. It's true that he had much to learn, but he also had much to teach. For when you wander as a fool, you wander freely with openness, and this allows you to fully connect with your surroundings. The fool was flamboyant. He dressed in bright colors and with artistic flair, and he carried in his hand a white flower as a symbol of his youthful innocence. It wasn't an image, it was simply the way he was. Everything was on show, for the fool was not accustomed to the ways of the world and had yet to begin his spiritual journey. This excited him greatly. He'd been waiting for the right moment, the optimum second when he would take a leap of faith into the unknown. Those who knew him would say he was a dreamer, and those who didn't assumed it was fear that held him back, when in fact it was the opposite. The fool was brave and bold, a spontaneous soul who was prepared to take a chance. He packed lightly for his journey, for what was the point of weighing himself down? He had no preconceived notions or expectations. This boy was a book waiting to be filled with adventure. His only companion was a small white dog, a faithful and loyal friend that had come to wave off his travels. The fool hadn't planned for his quest, for how can you plan for the future? His blind faith would keep him safe, and he hoped that his encounters would be fortunate. There was no guile in his manner, just an optimism that most who met him found contagious. He'd always been a playful boy, the type of character who would find fun anywhere, and because of this he'd built a reputation and been given his name, the Fool. And so it was that on a glorious summer's day, when the sun had set the sky alight with its golden rays, the fool said goodbye to all that he knew and loved. Today was the day for a new beginning. He could sense it, and driven by the slightest of whims, he decided to take the plunge. With his knapsack over his shoulder, he stepped out into the world. Taking long, purposeful strides, he embraced the air and gulped it down into his lungs. He turned his face upward and delighted at the warmth upon his cheeks. He held the white flower aloft as if it were an offering to gods, and he continued to walk one foot in front of the other. It was almost like a dance for him, a performance, and he enjoyed every second. His steps formed a rhythm that matched the beating of his heart, and soon he picked up speed and the walk became a trot. Light of foot, he sprang forward as the mountains rose up behind him. To any onlooker, he might have seemed like a foreboding omen, but not to the fool. He was oblivious, so caught up in the excitement of the moment that nothing else mattered. His little dog galloped at his side, yapping with glee. He was the only one that could match his companion's enthusiasm. Together they were lost in the dance, which is why the fool never noticed the edge of the cliff as it loomed closer. He didn't notice the sheer drop that could have been the end of the world, and would have been the end of him if he had fallen. I am free, I'm excited, I'm filled with joy. Let my spiritual quest begin. These were the thoughts that played like a mantra in his head. And like any magical chant, the words held a power of their own, a power so potent that it was enough to launch him off to his feet. He lifted up into the air, closed his eyes, and flew. Like a feather floating lazily on a gentle breeze, he drifted up, and away, with all of his dreams intact. If anyone had noticed the spectacle besides the little dog, they would no doubt say it was magic, and perhaps it was, but the fool had a magic running deep within his soul that he didn't even know about. Like any hapless child, he was unaware of his true nature and the things he could manifest. As it was, he was on his own in a land of dreams and about to learn the secrets of the universe. Tossing and turning as the wind picked up, the fool never opened his eyes. He had complete trust that all would work out as it should, and that he would eventually find his feet and be able to move on. Gradually, as the breeze settled, so too did the fool, his soles grazing the dusty ground beneath. Once more he was standing upright with the earth to support him. Taking a deep breath, he opened his eyes and surveyed the landscape. The vista before him was full of potential, a blank canvas from which he could create anything. The town of his birth was gone, and the mountains too. Everything was different and new. It was now that he realized the moment had come. His quest had at last begun.